So what do? They take the nutfa from the husband, they take the seed from the husband, they take the seed from the wife as well, they fertilize it in the lab. Having fertilized it in the lab, they do one of two things. One, they put it back in the uterus of the wife. Well, this is known as traditional gestation. Here, this is very straightforward. Who is the mother? The wife is the mother. But sometimes, they don't put it into the uterus of the wife, they put it in the uterus of a surrogate mother, which is known as gestational surrogacy. Alright? The uterus of another woman. So one woman provides the eggs, and another woman provides the uterus and gives nutrients to the baby until the baby grows to term and delivers the baby. Well, question, who is the mother? It's a very important question. Why? Because once you decide who the mother is, what happens after that? What happens after that? All the laws and the rights of motherhood get applied to that person, right? So, the right of inheritance to that mother. Mahramiyya to that mother, right? The right of obedience to that mother, right? All of those things get applied to that particular mother. Well, who's the mother? And this by no means is a simple ethical dilemma. It's a very complicated ethical dilemma. So today, what we want to do is to answer three questions. You have the notes in front of you. Question A is, what is Islam's definition of paternity and maternity? And how does this apply to the case of gestational surrogacy in an IVF process? Question number 2, do adoptive parents have the same legal status as biological parents? If not, can some of the rights of biological parents be transferred to adoptive parents? And C, can parents give up their children for adoption? Alright, before we come to those questions, let's start with the last question that we raised, the question of in vitro fertilization. As I say, traditionally, the definition of who's a mother was very simple. The Quran says, your mother is the one who gives birth to you. Somebody else cannot become your mother simply because you say she is my mother. You can treat her like your mother, but she doesn't become your real mother. And that was a very straightforward case, because the woman who provided the seed or the eggs was also the woman that gave birth to that person. But now with in vitro fertilization, in a gestational surrogacy, that becomes very difficult. And as I pointed out, it's not a simple ethical dilemma. It's a very difficult ethical dilemma. And you can see that in the works of our scholars, of our Maraj of Taqlid. Even they are struggling with this challenge. Even they have a divergence of opinion when it comes to this particular issue. And I just wanted to give you a taste of that. So if you look at the notes that you have, in those notes, when we talk about in vitro fertilization, let's just go through the notes for a moment. We say that, look, traditionally the father is the one who provides the nutfa, and the mother is the one who undergoes gestation and delivers the baby. This is because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, as for those of you who do dhihar to their wives by dhihar, who repudiate their wives by dhihar, they are not their mothers. Their mothers are only those who bore them. Then I say, technology has challenged this definition. And this raises a modern ethical dilemma as to who has the right. You can say maybe, you could say both of them are mothers. But who has the greater right to motherhood in this case? I just want to give an example from Sayyid Sistani. The way Sayyid Sistani has worded it, he says, لو نقلت بيوض المرأة الملحقة بماء الرجل إلى رحم امرأة أخرى. So the eggs of a lady fertilized by the nutfa, or the seed of a man, if they are put in a third party, in the womb of another woman, فنشأ فيها وتولد, and that zygote, it grows, and then she gives birth to the child. فهل هو ملحق بالأولى أو الثانية? He even asks, in his fatwa himself, he's asking, well, now that child, will you give it to the first mother, the one who provided the egg, or will you give it to the second mother, the one who gave birth to it? And don't think the mother who gave birth to it has done nothing but, carry the baby. She has a strong biological bond with that baby. She has a very real biological connection, because not only has she provided the womb to carry the baby, but the baby's growth, its flesh, its bones, its skin, all the nutrients required for it have come from the gestational surrogate mother, right? So she has, through her own body, caused that baby to grow. It's a very strong biological bond. Which one do you give it to? He says, فِيهِ وَجْهَانِ. There are two possibilities. It's not a simple issue. لَا يَخْلُ أَوَّلُهُمَا عَنْ وَجْهٍ. It seems that the first possibility is closer, meaning the mother who provides the eggs, she is the real mother. وَإِنْ كَانَ الْإِحْتِيَاطِ لَا يُتْرَكْ. Even though I recommend that you act with precaution, meaning wherever there are rights, you give the rights to both of them. And wherever, for example, you are worried about mahramiyya, you treat both of them as non-mahram to you. We'll talk about what that means. We'll come to that. Have some patience. So, I was reading the work of Sayyid Muhammad Rizvi, Maulana Rizvi. Many of you know him. He's in Toronto. He's written a wonderful book called Marriage and Morals. Marriage and Morals, he looks at new ways of conception. And one of the things that he looks at is exactly this. So over there, he says, well, let's look at the urfi definition, the common understanding of the people. Who would they define to be the mother? He says, in my opinion, there is no doubt that the mother who's carried the baby for 9 months and has given birth to the baby, the urf at least would say that she is the mother. She bore the effort. She provided the nutrients. Therefore, he says the child will treat her as the mother. He will inherit from her. And he says that there will be mahramiyya between the two of them. But then he says, well, what about the other mother? Which mother are we talking about now? The one who provided the eggs. What about her? Her relationship to the child is closer than the rida'i mother. Who's a rida'i mother? Not surrogate mother. Who's a rida'i mother? The one who breastfed the child. Sometimes you give the child to another lady. She breastfeeds the child. And after she breastfeeds the child for a while, it causes the child's bones and flesh to grow. She has a type of mother or a foster mother relationship to the child. And that foster mother relationship actually entails mahramiyya. Between the two of them, there is mahramiyya. Between her real children and that child, there's also mahramiyya as well, right? He says, well, this mother who provided the eggs, at least, the least you could say, is that she is mahram to this child. However, the child will not inherit from her. Okay. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Modern technology. Of course, one of the questions we haven't answered is, can you actually do this in Islam? Can you undergo in vitro fertilization in Islam? We're talking about not traditional surrogacy. We're talking about gestational surrogacy. So we have got a principle in Islam that we cannot put, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that every man and woman should guard their private parts. Our scholars say this also means that you can't take another man's seed and place it in a woman who's not married to him. This is not permissible. However, there are ways of getting around this. If this man marries the other woman, marries the surrogate mother in either a permanent or in a temporary relationship. So there are ways of getting around this. Now, coming to the topic of abortion today, I just wanted to show you through this example that in Islam, a biological connection will bring about the relationship of motherhood, or in some cases, the relationship of fatherhood. But that which Islam stresses upon is what? A biological connection. Now we come to the concept of adoption. It's important for us to realize that when we're talking about adoption, we're talking about two things. And it's important to make this distinction. Those who say that Islam does not allow for adoption, they have failed to make this distinction. In fact, some of our scholars, when they talk about the concept of adoption, they say adoption is of two types. One which is legal, the other which is illegal. What's the distinction? They say, when you're defining adoption, adoption entails two things. The first one is caring for the child. Providing for its basic necessities, food, shelter, clothing, providing education, providing health care to the child, providing care and love and affection to the child, treating the child emotionally, giving it the affection that you would have given to your own child. That's one process in adoption. The second thing that adoption also entails is to give the same legal status to the child that you would give to your own biological son or daughter. As far as the first one goes, not only is this allowed in Islam, this is highly encouraged in Islam. In fact, the Prophet of Allah, when he spoke about taking care of orphans, if I'm not mistaken, he says, "Ana wa kafilul aytam kahatayni fil jannah." Me and the one who takes care of the orphans will be together in paradise. Do you want to know how close we'll be together in paradise? Like these two fingers will be close in paradise. Whatever is my status in paradise, which is the highest status any human being can achieve, this person will be with me in that status, the one who takes care of the orphans. In fact, what is interesting is, the Prophet of Allah himself adopted a child. When the Prophet of Allah married Lady Khadija had a slave by the name of Zayd bin Haritha. The Prophet of Allah started to take care of Zayd, but instead of having a master-slave relationship with him, the Prophet of Allah had a father-son relationship with him. At the age of 40, when the Prophet of Allah declared himself to be a prophet, one of the first people to accept the message of the Prophet was who? Was Zayd bin Haritha. When the family of Zayd found out, his uncles and his real father found out that Zayd has accepted Islam, they thought maybe Zayd accepted Islam because he was a slave of the Prophet or slave of Lady Khadija, and he had no choice but to accept Islam. They came to Mecca and they said to him, "O Muhammad, this person, this particular son of ours was stolen from us, sold into slavery. You can't keep him as a slave." The Prophet of Allah said, "I free him in the way of Allah." Then they asked Zayd, "Come back with us." What did Zayd say? Zayd said, "I'm remaining with the Prophet of Allah. I chose to be a Muslim out of my own free will and my own volition." The father was incensed. The family were furious. The father said to him, "You're no longer my son. You can no longer call yourself Zayd bin Haritha." The Prophet of Allah said, "That is okay. From now on, he'll be called Zayd bin Muhammad." Now this changed later on, because there is a verse of the Quran that will come later on that will say that you cannot call adopted children with your own name. They have to retain their biological father's name. They have to retain their actual lineage and genealogy. You can take care of them, you can raise them, you can nurture them, but it will not change their name and other things as well. We'll come to that. All right. In fact, some people ask, what if you find a child in the street, an orphan? Are you allowed to take that orphan and to raise it and to take care of it? Sayyid Sistani, I was reading today, you know, when you find a child in the street and there's no one to take care of the child, in Arabic is known as al-laqit, something that you have found, something that's been left in the street. Sayyid Sistani was asked, are we allowed to take care of them? And he says, I don't have that. Yustahabbu akhdhu laqit. It is mustahab to take him. It is recommended to take him, to take care of him, to raise him and to nurture him, and even to treat him like you would treat your own child. So, is adoption in this sense allowed in Islam? Yes, it is allowed. It is encouraged. In fact, it is one of the best things that you can do.